different.
I see. Then there's another question on whether the virus could replicate in dead bodies, whether it is possible for the virus to replicate, and whether there's an implication on it contaminating groundwater in case of burial, whether there is any evidence regarding that.
No, I mean, that's a simple answer, because viruses can only replicate in living cells. Unlike bacteria, certain types of bacteria can survive and replicate, out in the environment, right? But viruses, by definition, require living cells to replicate in. So once the patient has died and the cells have died, the virus can no longer replicate and the virus will die. So that is point number one. Point number two, as I told you, the period of infectiousness is before the patient develops symptoms and the 4 or 5 days after the patient develops symptoms. That is where most of the infectiousness is. So, I mean, unless a patient dies, at day one after getting symptoms, which is extremely unlikely, by the time a patient dies, after 1 week, 2 weeks of infection, the infectiousness is much, much lower. Now, with serious ill patients, the duration of infectious virus can be a bit longer than the 10 days I told you, but still, overall, the level of infectiousness is much lower. We know that once patients develop antibodies, and again, most people develop antibodies by day 10 or thereabouts, again, infectious is lower. So, basically, transmission from a dead body is extremely unlikely, unlike, for example, Ebola. Ebola is a completely different situation, where transmission from corpses has been very well documented. But there is no reason to believe, really, that in the case of COVID-19, that a dead body is a major source of transmission. Then, of course, I'm familiar with this business of burial. So let me be clear. I mean, I'm quite happy to be cremated with or without COVID. I don't have a problem. But, I mean, to imagine, first and foremost, I told you the scientific evidence in terms of infectiousness at the time of death, the fact that the virus cannot survive after death, and then if you wrap the body in some impervious, wrapping, and I understand people are also talking about putting some chemical in, and you bury the body 6 feet underground, unless you bury the body right into running water, I mean, even if there's any residual infectious virus, that has to filter through many, many feet of soil and get into the water and survive in the water. To be honest, to be frank, I must say this is complete non-scientific arguments. And indeed, this is why WHO and many countries in the world, have no problem with this. Thank you. Yep.
Thanks.
Next question.
Yeah. There's another question on the
different.